This is my pasta angel ornament. She's made from pasta. You might recognize her from TikTok and Instagram, or even here on YouTube. She's pretty popular and really cute. My grandma used to make these. It was a popular vintage craft, and I've been working on recreating them. So I have some of my own versions. This is my songbook angel, inspired by my Grammy's original. This is an angel holding a shell, which was inspired by someone on TikTok. And this is my newest angel, which I haven't shared on social yet. I was super excited because I found some smaller hair, and now she looks even more like my Grammy's original. Cute. In today's video, I'm gonna walk you through exactly how I made these angels, go over all the materials, and share any tips that I have. So let's get into it. Let's start by talking about the pasta and the head, which is actually not pasta. It's a 25mm wood bead. It doesn't need to be a bead. We don't really use the hole. It could be a wood ball, but this is what I was able to find, and it's the correct size. The collar or the neck was rotelle, also known as a wagon wheel. These might be difficult to find in stores. I was able to get one at my local Italian market, but if you can't find one, you can just order them online. The body is rigatoni, a classic. The wings are farfalle, also known as bow tie pasta. The arms are made with elbow macaroni. For the hair, I use ditalini, but you could also use a tubetti. They are both teeny tube pastas, and I'll talk more about them in a moment. And then if you like, you can use cocciolette. I really hope I'm pronouncing these all right, but it's a baby shell pasta. Now let's talk about pasta brands. For my angels, I mostly use the brand decor. When choosing your noodles, keep sizing in mind because different brands can vary a lot in size and mixing them can look a little bit off. This angel is made fully from decor pasta. This one's made from decor but has a birria body. They're both rigatoni, but different brands have different sizing. The birria rigatoni looks a little bit out of place here, but I did notice that their bow tie pasta was a little bit smaller, so it might look a little bit better if it was all birria. I would just double check that the bead wasn't too big. But really, this is just me being a perfectionist. You absolutely can mix and match noodles. This is supposed to be fun. Now, with that being said, I didn't use decor pasta for everything. The shell was from the brand Riscosa. The ditalini hair on my original angel was from the brand Granoro, which I thought worked out really cute. I like that it had ridges like the body. It kind of pulled the look together. Some people did mention though, it kind of looks like curlers, which I totally do see. Maybe I like it because my Grammy wore curlers, but I don't know, I see them as little hair curls. However, I did end up finding another noodle that was more similar to one my Grammy used. It's smaller and smooth. It's a tubetti. So if you do prefer the smaller hair, the tubetti was from the brand Riscosa. I noticed that decor did have a tubetti, but I decided not to use that because it was too long and large for the wood bead. That's why I went with the other brands because they had smaller noodles. So be sure to check your pasta sizing. Ditalini and tubetti are both very similar noodles. One is supposed to be smaller than the other, but honestly, the internet wasn't very clear on which. And even in stores, I saw both tubetti and ditalini in like a range of sizes. I don't think you'll find the ditalini or tubetti in stores. Maybe you will, but I had luck at my local Italian market. If you can't find them, again, you can just order them online. And then lastly, I did mostly use decor macaroni for the arms. However, they do run on the smaller side, so I kind of had to cherry pick the bigger pieces. I noticed that other brands did have bigger macaroni. I ended up getting another box from the brand Signature Select from the grocery store. It probably wasn't fully necessary, but they definitely were bigger. So if you want bigger arms, you might want to look at other brands. You might prefer bigger macaroni. Anyways, that's enough about pasta. Let's talk about the other materials. I used gold pipe cleaners for the halos, a gold paint pen for the face, make sure it's a fine tip one. I used gold string to attach it to the tree. This is all knotted up. It's gonna be fun to deal with later. Scissors, some sort of wire. This is an ornament hook, but you could also use a paper clip. This is just used to hang the piece while it's being painted and drying. However, you could also use the wire to hang it on the tree. I use a string. My Grammy used both a string and a wire. It's totally up to you. Paper towels for messes, but also to help position the pieces while glue is drying. Gold paper if you're making a book. This is a cardstock. The back just looks like cardboard. Glue, and this one's important. I used a white glue because that's what my vintage crafting book said to use. I chose Aleene's tacky glue, the turbo kind. I don't know if turbo made a difference, but I do like how it has the small, longer tip for precision. I really liked working with this glue, but depending on how you decide to paint it, you may want a stronger glue. I'll talk more about paint in a minute, but if you do decide to dip your angels into paint, you'll definitely need a stronger glue, at least at the neck. Because the paint is watery, it would soften the hold of the white glue, and I had a few accidents where the angel's neck broke off, which was super sad. So definitely need a stronger glue. You can try using E6000 or Gorilla Super Glue Gel. Both of these will resist the water better and have a much stronger hold so your angel won't break off. So if you do want to dip it into paint, it'll work much better than the white glue. And you don't even have to use these on the full body. It really just needs to be at the neck, which is the weakest point that breaks off. Again, this is really only for the paint dipping method. For all the other methods of painting, this glue worked just fine. A lot of people also ask about hot glue guns. I hate using hot glue guns because I'm not very good at them and I always make a huge mess. However, white glue takes a long time to dry, which is very inconvenient when you're going piece by piece and you have to wait for them to dry. So a hot glue gun might be better because it dries instantly, and it might even hold up better for paint dipping. I don't know, I haven't tried it, but if you love hot glue guns, you can go ahead and give that one a try. And then you'll need paint. You're not gonna need all of these paints, but I just tried multiple ways to paint it, and these are all the paints I tried. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. If you're hand painting, you'll need paintbrushes, and you'll want a fine tip one because there are some small crevices. And then if you're dipping into paint, you will need a jar. Spray painting was by far the best option. I hate working with spray paint, but this was a water-based spray paint, so it's way less intense than the classic, I think, oil-based one. And I actually liked using it. You can use a classic spray paint. It might work even better, but I have not tried that, so you're gonna have to let me know. These are just classic craft paints. And then this is an interior wall paint with an eggshell finish that I got at a hardware store in a sample size. But we'll get back into paint in a moment. You can also add a varnish to protect your piece and give it some shine. You don't have to use one, but it's a great way to preserve the piece since they're so fragile. This is a spray satin varnish, and this is a paint on gloss varnish. A gloss varnish is gonna be shinier than a satin varnish. And these are just the two I happen to have on hand. There are a lot of different options available. If you do decide to apply a varnish, make sure you do it in light coats and wait for the paint to be fully dry, which might take a few days. People have also mentioned that varnish can protect the piece from bugs and animals. However, I don't think that's guaranteed, especially if you don't fully coat the inside. I think the best way to protect your piece is to make sure that it's stored in a secure container. Lastly, you'll need a cardboard box, and this is the best way to let your pieces dry, no matter how you paint them. Now that we've gone through all of the materials, I'm gonna start at the end of the project and walk you through my process of painting the completed angel, because how you decide to paint it will impact how you build it. I explored 3 ways of painting: hand painting, spray painting, and dipping into paint. First, I tried hand painting, and it was my least favorite. I absolutely hated it. I felt like the brush strokes made it look super streaky, and there were all these teeny crevices that I kept missing. You had to do so many coats to get full coverage, and it was so unbelievably messy, it drove me nuts. This one I put a varnish on though, and I do think it looks a little bit better. Now, just because I didn't enjoy it doesn't mean you won't either. You definitely can give it a try. It's a classic way to go about it. If you do want to hand paint, I recommend painting the pieces first before gluing them together, or at very least the larger pieces. Once it's assembled and dry, you can go back and add more coats, and this will help you get better coverage. For drying, you can either lay them out and paint them side by side or hang them inside a box. It's whatever is easier for you, but I think the box works best. In the tutorial, I'm gonna show you how I prepare the angels for spray paint. So I won't be pre-painting the noodles, but if you do decide to hand paint, don't forget to paint the pieces first. Next, I tried spray paint, and this is definitely the best option for a clean look. Like I said before, I hate working with spray paint, but I did enjoy this water-based spray paint. To do this, I grabbed a cardboard box and scissors and cut holes into the top of the box. Then I took my angel and a wire, and then I hooked the wire through her ditalini hair, and then attached the other end of the wire to the hole in the top of the box. Please note, I think it's easier to attach the wire to the box first and then add the angel, but that's not what I did in this video. Next, I grabbed my spray paint and sprayed my angel while turning the wire from the top of the box to make sure I got all of the sides. Don't just spray from straight on. Make sure that you're angling from above and below because it's easy to miss crevices. Once the first coat dried, I went in with a second coat. I always did at least 2 coats, but if I missed some spots, I would go in with a third. And that's it. So lastly, I tried paint dipping, where I would take the angel and dip her into paint. I wanted to try this because I thought it's what my Grammy did, and I did like this method because it was a one-step process. You just have to dip the angel once, and it's got full coverage, even on the inside, which I think is great. You can see my Grammys on her arm right there. However, it is a little bit difficult trying to fine-tune the process, making sure the paint is just right. And there can be some air bubbles, but you can try covering it with a paintbrush or addressing it while it's still wet. You can use a house paint or a craft paint. It is a little bit difficult because every paint is different, so you're gonna have to play around with thickness by adding some water. Only start with 1 teaspoon of water and see how that goes, and make sure that you mix it up very well. I did notice that the paint does tend to thin out as it dries, so just keep that in mind while you're working. And I kind of liked using the house paint without water, but you're gonna have to play around. It's a little bit of trial and error. To dip the angel, I set up a cardboard box with a wire hanging from the top. Next, I placed the paint below the wire, and remember, if you did add water to the paint, or even if you didn't, make sure that you shake and mix the paint well right before you dip. I then take a second wire and attach it to her ditalini hair. Then I position her so her wings are facing up and slowly dip her into the paint, and then gently turn her in a circle. The reason I dip her wings up is because sometimes the paint doesn't settle on the back of the wings, so I feel like this helps. Next, I slowly pull the angel out of the paint and hook her to the wire at the top of the box while the excess paint drips back into the jar. Then I wait for her to dry and hope for the best. Once she's fully dry, I slowly pull her off of the wire. Remember, they're very fragile, so you need to do this gently. If there's any paint stuck on the wire, you can use scissors or a knife to peel it off. Remember, if you do the paint dipping method, make sure you use a stronger glue, especially for the neck. That's enough about paint. It's time to jump back to the beginning of the process and glue our angel together. Remember, if you are hand painting, make sure that you paint your pasta first. I'm not doing that today, but don't forget. Because white glue takes a while to dry, I've pre-glued all my pieces, so they might look a little bit different at each step. I always start with my wood bead or my head, and I attach it to the wagon wheel. I've noticed that sometimes the wagon wheels have like a perfect flat side, and then the other side can be kind of curved and bumpy. If that's the case, I find it easier to attach the curved side directly to the bead because it's easier to attach the rigatoni to the flat side later. To start, I hold my bead and I attach glue around the circle or the hole. And then I grab the curved side of my wagon wheel and I attach it directly over the hole. That was a little bit more messy than I usually do. And then I do my best to kind of line it up so it's centered. You can try to line up the holes of the bead in the wagon wheel, but it's not always a perfect circle, so I kind of just eye it. Now we need to let it dry, and it's best that we do it on a hard, flat surface, which is just usually a table, but I have this paper on it, so it's not the best. So I'm gonna grab my ravioli plate. How perfect is this? And I am actually gonna flip it over and just leave it to dry like that. The reason I flip it over, because I feel like it's easier to see if it's lined up this way, and I can kind of shift it a little bit if I need to. Because this is the way it sits on the angel. Once the head is dry, it's time to add the rigatoni. So what I've noticed about the rigatoni is that their shapes can vary in the box. Some are nearly perfectly round, while others are more slim and narrow, which doesn't really matter, but it might impact the arm placement depending on how you want to use it or the size of the macaroni elbows you're using. But we can talk about this more once we get to the wings. So now we're gonna attach the rigatoni to our beaded and wagon wheel. I think I'm gonna use this narrow one. Now to do this, I like to have my head and wagon wheel balancing, and then I take my glue and just bring it all the way around the rigatoni. Then I take this over and just place it on the wagon wheel. I think I might turn it. I think this direction actually is a better fit. Then you can kind of look to see if it's all centered and make any adjustments that you might need. It looks good, so I'm just gonna balance that there and let it dry. Now that our piece has dried, it's time to attach our wings, and we need to decide if we want to attach them to our flat side or our narrow side. So if you see these two pieces, this one has a narrow rigatoni and this rigatoni is wide, and you can see there's a different distance between the arms. So this just might impact the way the book falls while they're holding it, or how you're able to place the noodles when you're holding the shell. But it's really not that important. It's just something I've noticed while I'm making them, so I thought I would point it out. Glue them however you want. So for attaching the bow tie, this is when I grab my paper towel and lightly fold it in half because we're gonna use it to kind of balance the piece. You'll notice on the bow tie pasta, there are two different sides. At least that's the case for this decor pasta. I always glue the piece on this side where the two edges are like touching, rather than this side. I let this one face open to the back. I think it's a lot sturdier and easier if you attach the glue on this side. So to glue it, like I said, I need to decide if I want it the flat side or the narrow side. The flat side sometimes is easier for balancing it on the wings, but I think I'm gonna go with the narrow side. So I'm gonna grab my paper towel and kind of line it up because I'm gonna be resting the head on the paper towel. I don't want it to be fully flat creased. I like having it push up a little bit so it can lift the heavy bead. So I'm gonna grab my glue and put it right here on the pinched side. And then I take my angel and just kind of line it up. I do my best to kind of make sure it's balanced and centered. This is probably the hardest part about gluing it. I can't really see right now because there's a camera in front of me. Don't mind me being a perfectionist. All right, that looks good. So now I'll leave that and wait for it to dry. Now that the wings are dry, you need to add the hair or the arms. It doesn't matter which order you do it in. Just make sure that your wings are actually dry. Sometimes I'm impatient and it gets messed up. I'm gonna start with the arms, and I'm gonna use my decor elbow macaroni. And like I mentioned, I picked out the bigger ones from the box. See, sometimes they can get very small, but other brands are generally much bigger. Before you add the arms, you're gonna have to decide which pasta angel you're making. You can make one holding a book, so the arms are gonna be out like this. Or you can do one that's holding the shell, and you're gonna have the arms flat and lined up even like that. And then you can glue the little shell onto them. For this piece, I think I'm gonna make a songbook angel, my original one, like my Grammys. Now to do this, I grab a macaroni elbow and I glue on one side. And then just kind of place it there and kind of, if it falls, you can kind of hold it and just kind of wait for the glue to dry a little bit and get tacky. And it just kind of stays there. Then I grab my other elbow, and then make sure that you're gluing the correct side on it. So I'm gonna place it here like that. So I'm gonna glue this side right here. Ooh. And then just kind of stick it on there. Once the glue dries a little bit, it's a little bit easier to adjust them without them falling off. But you definitely want to get them in the general place that you want them. All right, that looks good. Can't really show you too much without it moving. Here we go. Here's what it looks like from the sides. And then if it moves at all, I can just kind of push it back up. Once you're happy with the positioning, just let it dry. So now that the arms have dried, it's time to add our hair. And remember, you can do a ditalini, like my original angel, or you can do a tubetti, that's closer to my grandma's angel. Both of them are super cute, but today we're gonna do the ditalini, like my original angel. So to start, we're gonna need a lot of ditalini, probably not that much. When I was first doing this, I thought that I might need tweezers, but it's actually super easy, and I just do it with my hands. So to hang the angels, we use a string and I put it through one of the hair noodles. So when we're placing the noodles, you wanna make sure that you have at least one that's parallel to the wings if you want it to face forward when it hangs. And make sure it has space where you can thread some string through it. Here, I'll show you. So I grab my glue and a little noodle, and I put the glue where I wanna place it on the head. And then I just stick it down and wait for it to dry. Now, like I said, make sure that the noodle is parallel to the wings if you want to put the string through it to have it hang facing forward. And make sure you don't put other noodles too close to that noodle so you have space to put the string through it later. Now, you could put it at the back of the hole like me, or you could do one right here at the front. Either way works. So I just keep adding spots of glue and little noodles until her head is covered. I kind of like working in one direction because if I turn it too soon, they can slide, but of course they're not doing it now when I'm on camera. Maybe I'll catch it later, but they can slide out of the way if the glue is not holding it well. I just slide it back. And then I just keep going around. One mistake I was making at the beginning was I was doing the hairline way too high. I was leaving way too much space for the face, and it made it kind of awkward when I was drying it in. So make sure that you bring her hairline down a little bit so it's not a huge empty space for when you draw on the face. So I'm gonna add some more right here. And then if you don't like where you place something, you can always just kind of move it around and wipe the glue off if you need to. But yeah, I just keep going around and gluing the pasta around the face. I'll go ahead and fill in any gaps that there might be, and then I'm done. Make sure to check that your noodle at the top that you're gonna string has space to put the thread through. If not, you can probably find a different one. If you're doing the tubetti, you're not gonna really be able to do that because you crowd them so close together. So I just put a little extra noodle on top. You could do that for the ditalini, but you don't really need to. All right, now it's time to wait for it to dry, and then we need to paint. Once painted, you're gonna have to let it sit and dry for at least 24 hours. You wanna make sure that the paint is definitely fully dried. And once it is dried, it's time to add the face. And this part always makes me so nervous. I like to start with the mouth and then do the eyes. So I'm gonna start with the mouth. And then add an eye. And then I try to match the eyes. Cute! Now, if you're gonna varnish your angel, this is when you would do it. Like I said before, make sure that the paint is fully dry and set before you apply the varnish. You probably wanna wait like 48 hours after it dries. And make sure to do thin little coats. And of course, if you don't wanna varnish, you can skip that and we can go on to the next step. To make the halo, we need a pipe cleaner, our scissors, and our glue. Now, this glue does not work great with the pipe cleaner, so if you are interested in a hot glue gun, this might be the time to use it, or you can even try a stronger glue, like a Gorilla Glue or something, but I don't like doing that, so I'm still sticking with my white glue. To make the halo, I kind of size it up on my angel and kind of see where it fits best. It always works the best if you can kind of stick the halo or the pipe cleaner in between the grooves of our ditalini. See if it fits well right there versus just like sitting on top of it like that. But so yeah, I find the placement I like, and then I will trim the pipe cleaner if it lets me. There we go. And then I'll reposition the pipe cleaner, seeing how I kind of want it to fit. And then I'll take the ends and twist them around each other just so it kind of holds its shape. Just like that. So now is the part where I glue it, and again, this glue does not like working with the pipe cleaner. So once I glue it, I kind of just like hold it down for maybe like 30 seconds just to make sure it stays. So the way I glue it is I kind of just go in here and find the spaces where it's touching and kind of add some glue and then press it down. And I just kind of do that all the way around. And then I just kind of keep my fingers on it until the glue gets a little bit more tacky and it will hold the pipe cleaner on. Sometimes this is a lot harder than it is. This looks like it's one of the easier ones. I think it's because this pipe cleaner fits well in between the sections of the ditalini, so it's not pushing off as much. So yeah, I'll just sit here and wait until I feel comfortable that it will stay on. And then I'll place the angel down gently and let it dry. Once the halo has dried, you're gonna need to attach your string so you can hang it on the Christmas tree. If you prefer, you could take one of your ornament hooks from before and kind of glue it into the hole. I was kind of experimenting with that before. So you're gonna grab the end of your string and just kind of bring it, push it through the ditalini and grab it from the other side and pull it through. I'm gonna cut the string. Now I'm gonna take both ends and tie them together and kind of pull it down the length that I want it. I never know what's best for a Christmas tree. That looks good. And then I'm gonna carefully take it again and tie it into another knot and slowly pull it. Make sure that they stay in the right spot. I'm gonna kind of grab all four of these and pull them together. That way the double knot really helps hold the piece. Then I like to cut the extra ends off and then pull this around into the ditalini. If you're doing the Tibeti hair, you're not gonna be able to pull the knot into the noodle because I think it's gonna be too big, maybe. But this is what I do for the ditalini. And then I grab my glue again and kind of just push it in to the ditalini with the knot. And then I just kind of pull it in there so the glue holds the knot in the ditalini. And there we go, we have our angel. Now we need to do the book. So lastly, we need to make our songbook. This one was my Grammys. Here's one I made. Sometimes I make them bigger, sometimes I make them smaller. You can kind of play around with it to see what like fits best in your angel. But I'll just take my cardstock and my scissors and I'll just cut a little section off. That's more than I usually cut off, but it was at the end, so I just snipped it. So I'm gonna take this in advance and just kind of fold it how I want so I can kind of visualize it a little bit better. And then I'll trim it down to however I want it. And now let's try putting it with our little angel. And there she goes. She has her songbook. You can make them as short and wide as you want, really any size you want. My Grammy never glued them in. I'm not sure why she didn't do that, But if you want to keep it securely in with your angel, you can always add a little bit of glue to the arms and attach the book. That might be a better idea than how I do it, to be honest. I guess unless you want to see her sometimes without the book. But that's it. Now you know how to make these darling little pasta angels. You can make a bunch for your friends and family, or maybe just for your Christmas tree, or hang them up all year round. I hope this tutorial was easy to follow. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'm here to help. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can see more from me. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Happy crafting!